This is Surviving as a Civilian. I am your host, Scott. With the help of my friend Andrew, we created this podcast to share success stories of combat veterans and how they overcame the challenges of returning back to civilian life. These are actual stories told by actual veterans. Content warning, this podcast talks about war, and some of the stories in this podcast contain graphic events of violence and may contain explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Additionally, these veterans are telling their story of how they recall the events. Some of the details may have changed over time. Welcome to Surviving as a Civilian, episode 13, the AAR for Chris Compagnone. I am Scott, here as always with my friend Andrew. Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing very well today, Scott. Thank you for asking. The sun's actually shining in New York.
So this week's episode, last week's episode was Chris Compagnone, episode 12. This is obviously the last episode we're going to do for season 1. What were some of your thoughts after listening to this, Andrew?
The one thing he brought up on the start of the mission where they both got injured was the mortarmen shot loom rounds over him, and I've had that happen to me too. That is terrifying when those casings fall from the sky and you just hear them like plumping into the dirt next to you, and they could probably kill you if they land on you too.
Yeah, that was something else. That stuff happens all the time. This isn't mine, but I've had mortars go off very close to me, and then look at the guy, and he's like, "Oop, my bad."
Yeah, I know that stuff happens. I mean, some mortarmen are like sharpshooters with those things, and sometimes they're all over the place.
Right, it's a very dangerous job to have, I guess. Not necessarily for the mortarmen, but it's a lot of risk. You're taking a PFC and you're saying, "Hey, lay some rounds on that could kill a group of people down in this area." You know what I mean? Yeah,
I do know what you mean. The other thing that I thought was really, really cool that he brought up was when he went through Will's backpack and all his primers went off. And in my head, I was like, good thing they followed the sapper standards.
Right. Yep. That was a good thing. And it was good that those guys in that squad taught comp that to be able to do that. And they had a standard going across. So anywhere that would have happened, they would have the ability to get in anybody's backpack.
Yeah. Looking back on it now, especially after he said the primers blew up or went off, it's just so crazy to me, like looking back on being a combat engineer and that we would walk around looking for bombs with backpacks full of C4 on our back. And it's just like, it just seems like crazy to me now looking back at it, but I guess that's our job.
Yeah, I agree, Andrew. I think if you'd explain this concept to a regular civilian who's never had any interaction with the military, they would probably think that's an insane MOS.
Yeah, and you see so much nonsense, like Comp was talking about how he saw Will's foot still in the boot, the Danner boot, and it's like the way you think after being in combat is so weird too, that like when they told him that Will just blew up, and they were like, "Oh, it's just his leg, he's fine." You're like, he felt like relieved that he only blew his leg off, you know. So I thought that's just the way combat makes you think over time.
Yeah, you're right, Andrew. I mean, and we've talked about this in other ARs, like being over there in theater doing that stuff over and over and over. You kind of get numb to it, and unfortunately, things like that happen.
Yeah, it does take some unfortunate events for people to get back on track. The one thing that I thought was great with doing the interview with Comp was we released it right after Will's, and he was there for Will and he got injured on the same day. So it's just like a continuation of the same mission from two different points of view, and I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I agree. And you could even tell with Comp and how he spoke of Will, how still, he's still impressed by his leadership, and Will really had a lot of influence on those guys in that squad and the guys that weren't even in the squad.
Yeah, Will's a great guy, man, and uh, our comp's injury was one that like it's you don't really think of it that much of like damaging your eyes, and it's like, man, I don't know what would be worse, like going blind or losing a foot, like I don't know, that's a hard one, and like, yeah, we wear eye pro, but eye pro can only do so much, especially in an explosion. Yeah, your eyes are priceless, So another point that Comp brought up about after his military service was it taught him to keep his mouth shut. And like when I was in school and I was like listening to the teachers talk and the kids talk, like I know that feeling the same way. Like it's like not even worth your time to say anything. It'll just dig you deeper. So I thought that was a good point.
Yeah, some of the stuff that the Army's taught me is I'm able to sit in spots and not move and not say anything for long periods of time, and I don't get disappointed anymore. Nothing surprises me anymore.
Yeah, that's that's definitely a takeaway from the Army. I also like Comp's advice when he said, when you're getting out, he said, just like everyone else, he said, you better have a good support system. And I think that's the most important thing that you can take away for new guys getting out of the Army. And then he said, do stuff. He said, like, try stuff. He's like, even if you think you're not going to like it, he's like, try new stuff. And you never know, you might find something that you actually didn't know that you really enjoyed doing. And it could bring some joy into your life after the Army. And then he also said, don't focus on the negative. He's like, find the good. He's like, no matter how bad something is, you can always find something good in it.
Yeah, that was one of the better parts too, and it's an ongoing kind of theme with all the guys, all the people we talked to this season. They all kind of said, have a good support set up, but Comps was unique because he said focus on one thing, get that one thing done, and then move to the next thing, which is great advice. I want to say thank you, Andrew, for taking the time to do this. Again, this is the last episode of season 1. I appreciate all your hard work on this one, Andrew.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, Scott, and I'm looking forward to working with you again. See you later.
Thank you to Andrew, Charlie, Shane, Steph, Will, and Chris for making season 1 such a success. As a result, Andrew and I are moving forward with season 2, which will be out July 2020. Furthermore, thank you to all the listeners and supporters for making this podcast successful and getting the message out there. Remember, get help when you need it and give help when you can. Until next time.